Hello, everyone. My name is Kamil Gungor, and I work for ENIL as Policy and Movement Support Officer. And today I have with me Elizabeth Gosme. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Perfect.
uh, from COFACE, uh, an ally organization. We work together for years, and is addressing the matters of families on European level. But Elizabeth will tell us more about it. So thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us and welcome. Maybe could you introduce yourself a bit and your role in COFACE?
Sure. Thank you, Camille, and thanks so much for having me. My name's Elizabeth Gosme, and I'm director of COFACE Families Europe, and we're a European civil society organization with more than 50 members across 25 countries, and we advocate for the rights of all types of families without discrimination. We look at intersections of family policy with other areas like disability rights, child rights, education, migration, and more. And in practice, that means basically that we analyze European initiatives, policies, laws, and we track how the member states implement them. And of course, we work with our members to translate lived experience of families into concrete policy recommendations. And by the way, we have a strong COFACE disability platform advocating for inclusive pathways and disability rights. And it's with them that we did an EU policy review focusing on the work-life balance of parents with disabilities.
Thank you for this introduction. And I mean, it's great to hear that you have also this specific work on disability, and I think it's needed. And I assume that part of it was also this very interesting policy review you developed about work-life balance of parents with disabilities. And this report puts in the spotlight disabled parents rather than parents of disabled people. And I think this is very interesting. Of course, all of them deserve our attention and support, but especially about disabled parents, we don't hear that often. I think it is a group often left out of policy and even societal discussions. We don't talk about it. We don't consider disabled people potential parents and, families. And we have this kind of examples of, discrimination in the field. So could you tell us why COFACE decided to focus on work-life balance specifically on this group? And generally about your work on disability. Yeah, just to put the framework.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We focus on the family dimension of disability, and that could be many, many things, obviously. But what we noticed was that parents with a disability are often missing from policy discussions, like you said. Um, Frequently, like disability policy is framed around individuals being a recipient of care and not as someone who is actually a caregiver or a worker or a parent. And we wanted to kind of correct that blind spot in a sense. And we were actually inspired to do this following discussions with the European Commission on the disability employment package, which actually does not cover work-life balance measures at all. And of course, we were inspired by our own Shift vision. We have a guide called Shift, which is for meaningful inclusion of persons with disabilities, and it has a strong dimension linked to families. And for us, that Shift lens helps us rethink, disability policy using a societal lens. So, yeah, we focus on many dimensions of families and disability, but this was one we specifically wanted to focus on in 2025.
Thank you. And I mean, personally, I can say I'm happy you did focus on this because it is a great tool that is also useful for us and for many other activists and organizations.
Yeah,
And
like everyone in society, people with disabilities have a family life, no?
yeah,
With care
exactly.
responsibilities, and so it shouldn't be ignored, in policies.
No, it shouldn't, that we should be included. And in the report, we can see that this is not always the case, and I think we will come to it also in the discussion today. You just to say quickly, you mentioned Shift, which it's a very interesting, document you have, and we worked on that together in the past as well.
Yeah, we did.
So, so yeah, I also recommend to people to look for it and to read it. It's very useful. And yeah, but coming now to the specific policy document you have now, uh, and since you are so experienced also personally, but also as COFACE in the field. And I assume that you have seen a lot of things, but I am sure that there are also new things coming up when you developed this report. What were the most interesting or unexpected findings for you in this policy review?
Well, yeah, it's basically, well, if there's quite a few results, but what we can say is that it seems that there's greater attention actually paid to the needs of working parents with disabilities in social policies, focusing on work-life balance, employment, child poverty, than in disability policies and legislation. So this points for us to the sort of strong mainstreaming of disability rights in different policy fields, which is very positive, but it also highlights the need to strengthen the gender and family dimension of disability policy at European level. So, for instance, the European Commission's, I already said actually, the European Commission's disability employment package is definitely a strong starting point for boosting the rights of disabled workers, but the package lacks a family dimension and specific attention to working parents and carers with disabilities. So, yeah, I think generally speaking, we have a solid foundation at European level to work with when it comes to parents with disabilities and their work-life balance needs. Um, but there you go, definitely some gaps and room for improvement there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. And I like that. I mean, even though you mentioned the gaps and the challenges, you still, I felt you kept a positive note. I mean, that
Yes,
there are some developments, there are things that we can use and already in a way, so some things that protect parents of disabled parents, and I mean, the other ones as well. But there are still gaps and work to be done. And I also found very interesting what you said about the difference with the disability policies and social policies. And
yeah,
that's
it's
absolutely interesting.
I mean it was wasn't shocking. I mean, it's the reason why we did it, obviously, in a sense. But it's a very positive thing that disability rights are so well mainstreamed in other policies. But it was
That's good.
still, yeah,
This is
absolutely.
what we
So
fight for.
exactly, and that's definitely working. But for sure, our own disability policies can definitely be improved in terms of targeting parents with disabilities,
Yeah,
for
definitely.
sure.
But I fully agree with you. And one of the things we see in this review is that you explore the UNCRPD and how, which is great that we need to address it, I think, and we need to make sure people know about it because many don't. And how EU law interprets non-discrimination. In practical terms, how strong is the current EU framework in addressing disabled parents from discrimination and exclusion, you think?
Well, look, the EU frameworks, they do have real strengths. Like I said, it's a solid foundation. But when you look specifically at disabled parents as a target group, the framework is uneven still. Like the Employment Equality Directive, which was adopted in 2000, is an EU law which addresses disability within the workplace with definite rights in terms of reasonable accommodation. However, it doesn't mention in any way um, specific measures for parenting or work-life balance of parents with disabilities, which is fine and understandable up to a point. Um, but there you go. So I think we definitely have a good mainstreaming of UNCRPD principles. Um, but yeah, the feedback is that the implementation of the Employment Equality Directive is not always super effective. And that is whether you're disabled and you're a parent or not, basically. But okay, I think that's always a bit of an implementation gap we have right at European level. So we need to hang in there really and insist very much on monitoring and evaluation of the full implementation of the Employment Equality Directive. As for the EU Work-Life Balance Directive and UNCRPD principles, we think it's actually very good, very inclusive of parents with disabilities. I guess what is key, though, is the way it is transposed into national law. Um, so there are some countries which actually have focused specifically on leaves for parents with disabilities. in the transposition, and that's Germany, Sweden, and Greece. Um, so first of all, only 3 countries out of all 27 is not a big number. So we would expect definitely more focus on parents with disabilities in national laws. But even where there has been measures, which is absolutely to be commended, they're not always fully in line with UNCRPD thinking, in the sense that, for instance, there are leaves for parents with disabilities who can then transfer the leave to another family member, which is all very nice, but that's kind of it's designed with the idea that maybe the parent with disability is not capable of caring for their child. So I think our COFACE disability members have mixed views on these kind of measures, and just kind of would insist that where these specific leave-related measures are there for working parents with disabilities, that they should be designed really to ensure empowerment of the individual and really allowing for choice of the parents. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes, and thank you for
Yeah.
highlighting it. And I think I agree. Not I think I agree. I mean, it's definitely the way it should be seen. And
Yeah, the design of the measure is really important. Like, um,
yeah, but also, I mean, what is the message you send, and
yeah,
what I mean, how you, I mean, if it's just something you do, to say you did something or you really mean it,
yeah,
you can see it, in this kind of yeah, measures. And I think sometimes government just do something to say they did it for disabled people, but they
maybe,
don't
yeah.
really think of us still on as equal citizens with equal rights. In that case, equal parenting rights, and and stuff like that. So
Yeah, there's definitely always a societal shift that has to be there behind the laws, of
but it's a
course.
step. I would say that it's a
It is a
step,
step. You're right.
and
Sure.
it's good. And
Very
also,
optimistic.
I mean, we have to be.
We have to be. We have to be.
You also were optimistic previously in the previous
You're right.
question. So yeah, and I'm thinking also about the county differences you said. I mean, it's a bit sad to see that, there is, even though we talk about the EU mostly or Europe, and there is some big gaps between the countries. And
There are real gaps, but you know why? In the sense that the EU Work-Life Balance directive has minimum standards for certain things, and for leaves for parents with disabilities, it was more of an option, if you like. It wasn't a binding requirement. So member states were invited to look at the situation for different types of families, you
yeah,
know? And so, okay, it's still a starting point, but there you go.
yeah,
That's why it's a bit uneven, I presume, amongst other things.
no, yeah, makes sense.
But okay, at least we can quote some examples from countries and really get the discussion going. And we have been talking to many different networks, including the European Equality Law Network, which monitors the transposition of the directive. We've been talking to AGA, the European Institute for Gender Equality, that actually has quite a lot of data, which is very intersectional on gender and disability. So, yeah, I think the review will hopefully kick off discussions with um, certain networks and governments to maybe start thinking of reforming their parental leave in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And yeah, let's move I mean, many questions here in my mind, and I try to think also, to keep it in a timely manner. But let's go maybe to also to the EU disability, EU strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities, or related initiatives, or like the child guarantee, the gender equality strategies. How well are the needs of disabled parents reflected in these strategies, would you say? My guess it's so and so, or maybe not much, no?
Yeah, well, probably not enough. So that's definitely a major takeaway from our review. Um, so I mean, these initiatives that you mentioned, all of them, the strategies, they definitely contain very useful building blocks, inclusion, accessibility principles, aiming to reduce child poverty and promoting gender equality. So that they're all very useful per se. But disabled parents are rarely sort of treated as a distinct group. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. That's for people to discuss. Um, but we think you can have a universal approach with still maybe some targeted measures to look really at the intersections of different discriminations, So we think definitely the family dimension of the EU strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities is weak currently. And parents with disabilities are definitely not highlighted as a specific target group. Will we have a change in the new post 2025 strategy? Well, we really hope there will be a stronger family dimension. I mean, obviously, without that targeting, their needs can get really drowned out and completely disappear in the implementation. I mean, for instance, for childcare reforms that don't address accessibility of the childcare, or anti-poverty measures that don't recognize that there are disability related costs, without having that sort of focus on a target group that may suffer different discriminations, it can be hard to really drive change positively. But okay, in the child guarantee, it's a European soft law framework trying to address the situation of children in poverty across Europe. There, it does actually explicitly highlight parents with disabilities as a target group, referring to children in disadvantaged situations, basically looking at children who may be in families who are considered more vulnerable. And clearly, if parents with disabilities are not getting the support they need, then they are going to be more vulnerable. And so there, at least there's a clear and explicit mention, which is a starting point for then reporting and developing national measures. But this is more focused on families in more, yeah, situations of poverty specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for explaining and highlighting these things. I mean, many people have never, had the opportunity to read deeply, the strategies and these documents we discussed today. So it's good, to have experts like you to give us, the essence and the important aspects. What I mean, while were you talking, what came to my mind is also the shift in the motto of the disability community, because we used to say nothing about us without us. Now there is a shift in that, and we say nothing without us, because everything is about us in a way.
Okay.
And I
Interesting.
mean, and this is interesting if you think about it. So I mean, let's say we talk about climate change. It's not a disability specific topic, but
Yeah.
it should be without us because it should be with us because
Interesting.
because in the end, because disabled people are disproportionately affected by the climate aspects and disasters.
Absolutely.
We are the one left behind. The same with AI. And the same comes also to the topics we discuss, today. I mean, maybe you hear, I don't know, work-life balance or child guarantee, and you think, okay, that's not a disability-related topic. But of course, disabled people are part
It's
of the society.
everywhere. Of course. Yeah. It's mainstreamed
Yeah,
very well, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we say nothing
Nothing
without
without
us.
us. Interesting. That's
Yeah,
great. Okay. Noted.
yeah. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, the report also highlights intersections with poverty, you already mentioned a bit, inequality, and transport accessibility, which is, I think, it's super interesting because if you ask me, I mean, and I consider myself a kind of expert on disability rights, whether, what are the problems of disabled parents, in the work-life balance, I wouldn't guess and wouldn't say, guys, transport is one of the issues because, it's in a way it's so obvious that you don't even think about it. So can you explain a bit more about these broader issues and how they intensify work-life balance challenges for disabled parents?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, it came up quite strongly through our consultation of the COFACE disability platform. So it's true, we hadn't originally thought of that so much, even if the topic of transport comes up a lot when we're talking about time and families need time. Um, but yeah, there are many intersections. And since we work in different fields, we really wanted to try and look at those intersections. I mean, we've already talked about poverty and disability related costs. So disabled parents uh, can be more likely to face extra costs, linked to assistive tech or healthcare or accessible housing when you need to do different accommodations in the housing. And so, yeah, that's one. area that we looked at, but also the high risks of reduced working hours or unstable employment. So yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand, and these different issues amplify each other, obviously. Um, and then similarly, if public transport is not accessible or reliable, well, basic tasks become time consuming and unpredictable, right? So like commuting, childcare drop off, school meetings that you need to attend during the day, or medical appointments. Um, and all of that makes work-life balance a structural challenge and not just an individual one, right? So these kind of things tend to, or these challenges, let's say, they tend to squeeze both time and income. And so, yeah, that's why we drew out a bit the transport dimension in this. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, no question. It's super relevant, and I mean, it's not only transport. You address a lot of other, things, and
Yeah, yeah, a lot more, yes.
yeah. So, what are the most common everyday barriers you would say that disabled parents face, based on your work in the COFACE in general, but also in the report findings?
Well, I mean, common barriers in general. Look, I mean, parents who have children with different disabilities, it depends what society they're growing up in, the children. If you have a society that's not very disability friendly, then yeah, that's the biggest struggle, to be honest. It's cultural um, attitudes towards disability that can be really complicated. And as a parent, if you want to build an inclusive life for your child, um, there can be more or less barriers that you need to address daily. And yeah, obviously, just decent, affordable public transport is in them, but also decent, affordable childcare, um, flexible working. And by the way, this is for you as a parent, as a disability or not. So, um, obviously there are parents with disabilities who are also caring for a child with a disability. And so, yeah, all of that intersects, of course. You've got different needs. And society does not always build this into the design, basically, of different key services. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean,
When you say services, I would also add support services like personal assistance for parents
absolutely,
to be able to manage work, but also the caring of the children, which
absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And so in services, of course, there's a lot in services and support services, well, all the public services you need really to live a decent life. Um, but yeah, but there are many, but to be honest, cultural barriers are the biggest sometimes, you know. You can have inclusive education in principle, and that's amazing, by the way, where it is actually properly implemented with reasonable accommodations in schools and more. But the attitude still needs to change, I think, in a number of countries. There's definitely more progressive countries than others. And that goes for the workplace as well. But of course, if you have inclusive education, you grow up in a society that sees difference, that values diversity, and then that shifts into workplace dynamics because people grow up with that diversity and full understanding of inclusion. So for us, that's why we focus a lot on inclusive education as well. And that's why we focus on um, childcare. It's got to start from the earliest age, you know?
yeah, yeah, and I think some years ago you had an event when I had the honor to be invited to
Yeah,
speak
in Italy.
about, yeah, in Italy, about the inclusive education aspect and what is the role it plays, in the whole family ecosystem, and yeah, I think it's important. And also in the society ecosystem. I mean, why inclusive education is the kind of one of the cornerstones later for, more inclusive societies and support. But let's move to the next questions. How would you say can employers and policymakers better meet the work-life balance needs of disabled parents? What needs to be done?
Yeah, well, on the employer front, yeah, a number of things. I mean, we need to normalize flexible working where feasible without penalizing progression, in the career. And flexible working can look like different things, of course, depending on the nature of the work, but that can be remote work, reduced hours. Um, you know, Sometimes it's useful to work part-time. And this is not a common pattern in all labor markets across Europe. So flexible working arrangements, that should just be the norm. Secondly, treating reasonable accommodation as routine, as timely, as a collaboration. So making reasonable accommodation just part of the onboarding process. Um, what else can employers do? I mean, training managers to avoid bias around disability and parenting would be an obvious one. And just generally ensuring that workplaces and HR process are accessible, including communication. So yeah, there's more things on the employer front, but I think these are clear ones. And um, we also got feedback saying that it's easier if employers have a general um, flexible work arrangement policy for all workers, because otherwise, if they don't, you have to then proactively ask for that. And that can also create stigma and tension between employees. So, kind of having a general policy of flexible work arrangements for all is a way of reducing stigma as well. But yeah, on the policymaker front, well, I mean, there's a lot done already for family policy spaces and like making childcare and after school more accessible by design. Some countries really get that right, but others really still have a long way to go to make those fully accessible to children with disabilities um, or children in general. So it depends if the parent is with a disability or the child, but ultimately this service needs to be designed accessibly. Um, Ensuring that the flexible working and the leaves are rights that are actually usable in practice. So making them, well, not just theoretical, but real, and also making them affordable. So when you take a leave, that you are well paid. Um, and also, I guess, maybe strengthening enforcement and guidance on reasonable accommodation rights. So that means monitoring and evaluation employees a bit better. Yeah, some of these things.
No, no, thank you, and very good points. And I hope someone listens to our podcast and
I hope
they
so
try
too.
to, yeah, hopefully we can share it definitely. And we can, share it in the future when the opportunity arises. I like also the aspect that you said that you should not be necessarily specifically for disabled people, but for everyone,
Yeah,
for the stigma, but also for the logic that we, in the end of the day, we are all part of the society and we
yeah.
have the same needs in a way. I mean, just some people need a different way of support to realize those needs, but the same needs and the same rights.
Yeah, that
And
came up quite strongly in the discussions we had actually, yeah, with the
And I fully
network.
agree with that. And yeah, thank you for mentioning it. What about us? What about disabled people and organizations like ENIL and other DPOs and family advocates, in advancing these issues at the EU or national levels? What support, we could provide, or what support we maybe we would also need, you know?
Well, I think ENIL, as always, is amazing, and the members of ENIL are essential because they bring lived experience. They identify gaps, early, and they hold the EU institutions and national institutions accountable. So that's always really important, I think, as a role. Um, I think it would be super interesting to have the conversation in ENIL about their members and their caring responsibilities, and about their own work-life balance. What are their needs? What are their challenges? What are their recommendations? And do they then reflect the same results as our review? I don't know. I don't know if that's something that can be explored, but I think in general, just
I I think
also,
it can.
yeah,
I think it can, and we could do that actually. It's very interesting.
we could do it together. We could.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a reality, that exists. We all have a family, whatever it looks like, and we do have caring responsibilities at some point in life. And when we do, that affects work inevitably. So it creates a whole level of stress, to be honest. And yeah, I think that's just a reality we wanted to put forward. And the second thing maybe I would say is it's interesting, I think, to talk to the European Commission and EU policymakers about parents with disabilities, because when we were doing our review, they didn't always understand what we meant. Very often they interpreted it as parents of children with disabilities. And we were like, no, 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 that's not what we're talking
Yeah.
about. We're talking about
Exactly what
parents.
I said in the beginning.
Yeah, right. And so that's something that came up and was quite surprising to us, to be honest. So even if, yeah, there are solid foundations and yes, there is some visibility, I think we need to talk about it more, to be honest. But okay, that's we're a bit
Definitely.
biased as a family organization. So, but there's a family dimension in a lot of things, and that's kind of bringing a more holistic lens um, to discussions. And that can be interesting just to have the discussion, I think, in ENIL.
I agree, and we note your points, and I think we are happy,
Just
to
an idea, just a
no, no, no,
suggestion.
no, 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 but no, no. I mean, we of course need to sit together, and but
Sure.
I think it's something we could explore, and it makes very much sense to address. And yeah, also what you said that I mean, policymakers, or I mean, and society, I would say, very often doesn't think of us as parents. I mean, they think of our parents, yes, and these poor people that had this bad luck of having disabled children, and now they need the help of God and of our support and love, which is of course okay. I mean, I can understand to
Yeah, but
some
we need to
extent.
shift the thinking there, I think.
Exactly. But I mean, when you say, oh, I will be a parent tomorrow, they will be like, what? We need to talk about it. And I think we need also to explore. We have a lot of families that are with disabled parents, and that's
Mhm.
great. And, we could do stuff together and, like collaboration with COFACE and why not other stakeholders to, research more the topic, to bring more spotlight and, to bring to the events, these voices and these experiences. I think it's super interesting and can help improve our society and the policies. I don't know if there is anything on policy. I don't know what policy changes that should prioritize it in EU level.
A European level.
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, and maybe how we could measure the progress. How do we know that something is progressed?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are some priorities for us, especially as we're talking now together, just as the EU is preparing the next phase of the EU strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities. So for us, the priority would be to strengthen the family dimension of that, whatever it looks like, but definitely bringing more of a holistic lens to that. Second thing is explicitly recognizing disabled parents in strategies and guidance. I mean, visibility matters at some point, yes, these measures are for all, but some people have intersecting maybe challenges that need to be recognized. Um, yeah, clearly stronger implementation and enforcement of the Employment Equality Directive. I think reasonable accommodation is still not a reality across many countries. So there's definitely more that can be done there. More accessible and affordable childcare and inclusive education. I mean, the EU doesn't have a competence in inclusive education, but it can still definitely develop guidelines for schools on how to make, inclusive education a reality and what kind of accommodations are needed. And that can go through training. Um, what else? Yeah, definitely improved data collection that captures that intersection of disability, parenthood, and employment. I mean, we have data, but it can definitely be improved. And then in terms of measuring progress, well, I mean, there's a couple of things, but we could track employment and retention rates of disabled parents and the quality of their jobs. We could track uptake and accessibility of leaves and flexible work arrangements around disabled parents. We could also look at the availability of accessible childcare and after school services. So, there's a number of areas that we could really dive into, to be honest. And we're always there to have that conversation and provide some policy guidance and practical guidance, of course.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Quite a few areas.
Yeah.
I assume there is even more, but I mean, yeah, let's start with the ones you mentioned, which are all super important. And of course, we are happy as a need and as civil society to work together, and I mean, if you ever need to reach, I don't know, to a broader, disability community to gather data, feel free to let us know. And we will be happy to share, if you have surveys or if you need lived experiences or whatever. I think it's important what you mentioned and the work that is done. So we are happy to be part of it. And of course, the same from our side when we know about your work and you have expertise that sometimes we don't have. So we will definitely reach to COFACE and to say, hey guys, maybe we can work together on this, or what is
Absolutely,
your opinion on
absolutely.
that? And
We should.
so yes, thank you. I think it was a very nice discussion. Maybe slightly longer than expected, but when we talk together, it's always nice, and there is so many things to say. And so finally, before we close, what gives you hope for the future? If there is anything give you hope for the future, we will make sure that Santa listens to our podcast and make your hope a reality.
Amazing. Perfect timing. That's really great timing. Um, Look, I'm hopeful because disabled parents and advocates are increasingly visible and organized. I mean, we represent some of them, but certainly not all. We have disabled parents within our network, but we need to, yeah, make them more visible, I think. Um, and also just make sure that EU level frameworks have strong principles insisting that parenting and employment must be equally open to everyone, basically. Um, and if Santa is listening, Camille, if he is, I would
He is.
ask,
I
is he
believe in
now?
Santa. I believe in Santa.
I believe it too. I want to hope. I would ask for EU leadership on this topic. I would ask for proper funding and possibly a general rethink of disability policy using that more societal lens. So looking beyond the individual is really important, but they live in a society in a context. So for us, that would also help mainstream disability even further, into different policy areas. But there you go. Maybe it's a big wish list.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It is. I don't know if it's a big wish list. It's a very reasonable one, and I hope it becomes it will be fulfilled. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for being with us and sharing your findings and your experience and your thoughts about disabled parents and the challenges we face and you know everything around the topic. Uh, it was really nice, and I hope we continue to work together and together with other stakeholders as well. There is a lot of interesting things happening around disabled people, around families, around the intersection also. So yeah, let's be in touch on that. I want to
Definitely keep
thank
in
you.
touch.
So I want to thank you. I want to wish you a nice end of the year for you and for COFACE and a great 2026 for for your work and for our work and to make sure we will continue this. And yeah, to all of you that were with us today, thank you for listening to us. We hope you found this discussion fruitful and interesting. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at ENIL and at COFACE. I fully encourage you to follow the COFACE work and to read the document, this policy review, but also all the other things they do. It's really interesting. And follow them on social media. They're quite active. And yeah, we will be in touch. Have a good day, rest of the day. And yeah, enjoy the end of the year. See you.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.